Hello, I'm Donny. I'm the designer for Know Me pattern number 2154. So this design is for a pair of pants or a pair of color block pants. So there's a main fabric and two contrast fabrics. These were designed with color blocking in mind, so feel free to mix up the colors or use as many different colors or patterns as you want. In terms of fit, these pants have a fairly wide thigh, and they come to, I'd say, like a pretty aggressive taper at the hem. It has one front patch pocket and two back patch pockets, along with knee pads. So the version on the envelope and the version I'm going to make today is made from 10-ounce denim. But feel free to use any sort of medium to heavyish weight woven fabric. So like a cotton twill, maybe like a lighter canvas. But again, this is made with patchwork, or color blocking in mind, so mix it up however you want. Yeah, let's get started. So for this pattern, you'll need your two top front pieces. So I've cut them out of a brown piece and a blue piece. You'll also need your upper back pieces, your lower front pieces, and your lower back pieces. For all the pockets, you'll need your two front side pieces and the pocket bags that will go with them. And this is just cut out from a piece of scrap cotton that I had. There's one front patch pocket on the right leg, and you'll need the smaller pocket piece and the two pocket flap pieces for it. Now for this, I've already interfaced the pocket flaps, and for these pocket pieces, I've already transferred all my markings. I've also finished the raw edges with the zigzag stitch, and I've made a little stitch line, maybe like a 1/4 inch away from the fold line, and this is up to where I'll trim off the fabric to make it easier for easing in the curve later. And then there are two patch pocket pieces for the back legs as well. For the fly pieces, the left leg has a fly facing piece, which I've already interfaced. The pattern has me use a cotton lining, but the denim I'm using is, I think, light enough that I can use the self fabric for the facing. And here is the other left fly piece that will have your buttonholes on it. And here is the right fly facing piece that will have your buttons on it. Here are my two back yoke pieces, and I've already stay stitched around the perimeter to prevent it from warping or stretching out as I work with the fabric pieces. Here I have a long strip of fabric that I will use for my belt loops. And here are my two waistband pieces, which I've already interfaced. Finally, I have my two knee patch pieces and my two hem pieces, and these are also cut out from a blue denim. They don't contrast as much with the other blue denim I have, but maybe it contrasts enough for the video. So yeah, those are my fabric pieces. So the first thing I'm going to work on is the front patch pocket piece. The first thing I'll do is fold it along this top marking line, which is about an inch away from the edge. And fold that down, and I've also marked it on the back. And now I'm going to sew 5/8 of an inch down, just right here and right here to hold it down. Okay, so now I'm taking this to my ironing board. I'm going to trim off the corners, turn out the top hem, and then press it. I'm also going to press all the way around the edge of my pocket. And when I get to the rounded edges, I'm going to trim to this 1/4 inch line that I've sewn here. And then once that's all pressed and tidied up, I'm going to attach it to my front right leg piece. Okay, so here's my pocket and I've pressed it and everything. I also sewed a line across the top to hold down the hem, and I used some top stitching thread. Here's the inside where you can see that I've pressed in all the edges, and along the rounded corners I've trimmed as much as I could towards my easing stitches. So I'm going to leave this to the side for now and then work on the pocket flaps. So for the pocket flaps, I have 2 pieces. One of them is interfaced. I'm just going to sew them right sides together, and I've drawn on my stitching lines. You don't have to do that, but I like to do it because it makes sewing along the curves a lot easier for me. Here's my pocket flap. I'm going to give it a quick top stitch around the edges, and then I'm going to add a buttonhole. Okay, so I already attached the button to my patch pocket, and here is the buttonhole on the flap. So now I'm going to line up the pocket with the bottom 2 dots on my front right piece. And then I'm going to edge stitch along these 3 edges of my patch pocket. Here is the front patch pocket attached. So what I did was an edge stitch, and then I did a second row, a 1/4 inch in, and then I did a bar tack at the tops to give it some more stability. You can see that my top stitching isn't super perfect. There's a little line here where I fell off of the edge of the pocket, but overall I think it looks pretty nice. So now I'm going to take my pocket flap, I'm going to line it up against the top edge of the pocket, and then I will sew 5/8 of an inch in from the raw edge of the pocket flap. And then when I fold it over, it should hopefully match and cover the pocket edge. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll trim down seam allowance once I've sewn it down. And then once I fold and press it over, I'm going to top stitch that folded edge. All right, here is my front patch pocket attached and my pocket flap attached. So I did a quick top stitch about a 1/4 inch in from the folded edge, and then I tried to do a bar tack on the ends here to give it a little bit more stability. I had some trouble fitting it under my machine due to the bulk, but overall I think it looks fine from a distance. Okay, so now I'm going to work on attaching the side pocket. So here's a side pattern piece, and I've already pressed the long edge in by a 1/4 inch. So now I'm going to take my pocket bag piece and match up the dots on the side front with the dots, or I've drawn them as X's here on the pocket bag. And now I'm going to make sure they're lined up. and then edge stitch these two pieces together along this folded edge. So my side front piece is now attached to the pocket bag, and now I'm going to attach it to my front right leg piece. So I'm going to put them right sides together and then sew along this slanted edge. Now I can't remember if I said this earlier, but I did interface this edge on the pant leg piece just to give it some more stability. I was worried that this edge might grow or warp over time or as I sewed with it, so this just gives it a little more stability. So now I'm going to sew this edge, press it towards the pocket bag, understitch it, fold that all in, and then top stitch. All right, so here is my pocket bag stitched and then understitched to my front piece. So now I'm going to fold this in and give it a good press. And then I'll top stitch along this edge. All right, so now my pocket edge is top stitched, so now I can fold over the side piece. And then if I match everything up, I should now have a nice completed, almost completed front pocket. All right, so this looks good to me. So now what I'll do is I will close out the pocket bag, and then I will baste everything together at the side and along the top. I'll repeat all these steps for the left leg piece, and then we can come back and do the fly. All right, so I've got my side pockets attached to both my right and left front pieces, and now I'm going to work on attaching the left fly. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the fly facing piece, and then I'm going to sew it to the left side at 5/8 inch seam allowance down to the marked line. I'm going to trim down the seam allowance, press it, understitch it, and then fold it into the left side. Here is my left side. I've attached and understitched the fly facing, and I've also folded it and pressed it in. So now I'm going to put this to the side for now and work on the actual fly. So I've already pressed it in half. So what I'm going to do now is baste along what is this long edge and this curved edge, and then I'm going to sew buttonholes where they're marked. All right, so now my fly and my fly facing are attached to my front piece. I didn't see this in the instructions, but I also decided to zigzag the raw edge of the fly. So now this side is done for now, and I'm going to move forward with the right side of the front piece. So for the right fly, I'm going to fold it right sides together, and then sew this bottom curved edge at a 5/8 seam allowance. All right, so now I'm just going to trim this edge, press it, and then turn it right sides out. So now this is pressed. I'm going to attach it to my right front, and I'm going to sew it at a 3/8 seam allowance. And I'm only going to go down to where this line is marked. All right, so now the right fly is sewn to the right front. I've also zigzag stitched the raw edge just to keep it together. So now I'm going to press this flat and then attach my right and front pieces together. My front pieces are now attached, and I've top stitched the left fly. So now I'm going to work on the back pieces. For the back pieces, I've already attached the pockets the same way I attached the front right patch pocket. So now I'm going to move forward and add the yoke. So for the yoke, I'm just going to sew these right sides together. I'll push the seam up towards the yoke, and then I'll top stitch it. Here are my two back pieces, and now I'm going to attach them along the center seam. And then once they're attached along the center, I'll attach them to the front. All right, here is my upper back. And now I'm going to attach it to my upper front along the inseam here. So I'll do that and then probably top stitch the center seam. Okay, so now the upper part of my pants are attached together, and I've top stitched along the center seam. So now I'm going to work on the lower part of the legs. Okay, so I have a lower back leg piece and a lower front leg piece, and I'm going to attach them along the inseam. And so on the pattern pieces, that's the side without the notch. So I'm just gonna sew it along this inseam edge here. All right, so here is one of my lower leg pieces. Here's the front, here's the back. And now I'm going to attach it to the upper part, right sides together. So I'm just gonna make sure the side seam or the inseam matches and the notches match. And then I'll just sew them together. Okay, so here is my upper pants attached to my lower pants. Before I attached it, I also zigzagged the inseam edge just to keep the fabric from fraying. And I think I'll do the same with the seam I just made. I'm just going to zigzag along here because you can see it's already fraying quite a bit. And now, once I'm done with that, I'll push the seam up towards the upper pants and then top stitch. All right, here are my pants. I've done the top stitch where the top and the bottom leg meet. I've also zigzag stitched the entire length of the side for all four pieces, so both fronts and both backs. I noticed that this fabric was fraying quite a bit, so I just zigzag stitched it down to hopefully stem that for now. Before I close up the side seams, I'm going to attach the front knee patches, and I'm using this. I'm going to use this other blue denim. So this piece has a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I think I'll treat it the same way I did the pockets, where I'll sew a line very close to the fold line, trim down to that stitch line to remove some bulk around the curved edges, and then I'll press down where around the perimeter of the patch where it's marked. And then I'll just place it onto the pattern where it's marked and then sew it down. Okay, here is my knee patch or leg patch, and I've pressed in the seam allowance. I ended up not needing to trim anything, so it's just a little bunched up there, but that's fine. And then I also drew on the 1/4 inch line that I'm gonna stitch on. So when I attach these to the leg, I'm going to do an edge stitch and then another stitch 1/4 inch in. And don't mind these marks right here. These are just from my iron dribbling water over the fabric. So I'm going to attach these to my pant legs and then come back. So my leg patches are attached now. So I'm ready to close up the side seams. I think overall the stitching is fine. There's like some wobbly areas like here and here, and probably more if I keep staring at it, but I think it looks fine from the distance. So now I'm going to close up the side seams by putting my front and back legs together, right sides together, and then sewing all the way down, matching notches and the seam here. And then I think I'll press that seam flat. So these are my pants. I've sewn up the side seam and I've pressed it flat. So this pants part is done now. I'm gonna work on adding the belt loops. So for the belt loops, I took the pattern piece and then I folded it in half like this, and then I pressed it, and then I took each raw edge and then I pressed that in towards that fold or that crease I just made. I did the same thing to the other side, and then I just pressed it again. So now I'm going to edge stitch this piece closed. Okay, so the edge is sewn down here. I've also marked my belt loops at 4.5 inches rather than 4 inches like the pattern says. I find the extra half inch a little more comfortable to work with, so I cut the pattern piece and my belt loops a little longer than what's suggested. So now I'm going to cut these and then baste them to my pants where they're marked on the pattern or they're marked on the fabric. So I've just basted my belt loops and I've also sewn them down at 1.125 from the raw edge. So they're already tacked down right here too. And then once I have the waistband on, I'll roll them up and then sew them onto the waistband. So I've placed the belt loops where the pattern suggested except for the center back belt loop, where rather than putting it directly on the seam, I've offset it a little bit so that it's on the side without the seam allowance. So from the inside, here is the seam allowance and my belt loop is over here. And this just reduces a little bit of the bulk that would be happening here along this back center seam. You don't have to do this, especially if it would bother you that the belt loop isn't perfectly center, but this is what I like to do to help reduce a little bit of the bulk in this area. All right, so I'm ready to attach my waistband. Here is one of my waistband pieces. I don't know if you'll see this on camera, but I've also made all the markings I need to make. Here's the other side of my waistband, and I've traced on my stitch lines just to help me make sure I get a really exact stitch. You'll also notice that my interfacing isn't quite the right size, but it's all within my seam allowance, so I think it'll be okay. So now I'm going to attach this to the right side of my pant. I'm going to make sure all my markings line up and everything. And then I'll stitch that on and then press the seam allowance up towards the waistband. Okay, so my waistband is attached and I've pressed the seam allowance up towards the waistband. And now I want to attach my waistband facing. So I've already trimmed off 1/8 of an inch from the lower edge of the facing, and I've also zigzag stitched it. So now I'm going to take it and put it right sides together with the waistband I've already have attached on, and then I'm going to sew along the 3 edges. So this short edge all the way across, and then this down the short edge here. All right, before I turn out and press the waistband facing, I'm just going to show you that I trimmed the corners, trimmed away a little bit of the bulk on the seam allowances here, here, and it trimmed off some of the seam allowance for my right fly and my left fly. So now I'm going to turn out my facing, press it. I'm going to press the seam allowance towards the waistband facing, and then I'm going to understitch as much of it as I can. I probably won't be able to get into the corners right here where the fabric's going to be like a little more tight. I'll probably be able to get most of it, I think. All right, so I've understitched and pressed my waistband and waistband facing, and before I stitch, I'm going to fold in. I'm going to fold in this corner at the end of each fly, just so that I don't have fabric peeking out from the other side, from the front. So I'm just going to make sure that's tucked in. Now I'm going to pin my waistband down just to make sure the fabric doesn't shift around too much. And then I'm going to ditch stitch all along this bottom length of the waistband. Okay, so I've ditch stitched all the way around my waistband. So now I'm going to do an edge stitch around the entire perimeter of this waistband. Okay, so I just finished top stitching the outer edge of my waistband. You can see that's not super perfect, especially at these ends here. You know, I think I could have done a better job if I hand cranked it at these tricky areas. I think, and even with trimming away some of the seam allowance, it was still quite bulky around the fly area. But overall, I think it looks good. I think it looks, fine from a distance. There's some like wobbliness here, but from far away, I guess it's okay. So now I'm going to finish the belt loops or carriers. So to do that, I'm just going to fold them in by about 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit more because I had the extra length. And then I'll just top stitch across the top right there. I think I'll hand crank that because this is a lot of fabric to stitch through, and even though my machine says it's heavy duty, I don't think it's that strong. So yeah, I'll just attach the top of my belt loops to the pants, and then I'll add the buttonhole to the left side of the pants, and then the waistband area will be done. Okay, so the waistband is done now. I just finished putting on the buttonhole. My belt loops are attached. And now I'm going to work on the bottom hems of my pant. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew this leg band piece, the short edges together at 5/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so here's my leg band piece. I pressed that seam allowance flat and then I folded it in half. And now I'm going to attach it to the bottom of my pant leg. I'm going to do this from the inside of the pant. So I'm taking this seam and then I'm going to match it with the inseam of the pant. And then I'm going to match notches and the dot on the leg band piece to the side seam. And now I'm going to sew all the way around. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that leg out and then turn the band up. Now I have my cuff for the pant leg. I think what I'll do is I will see if I can fit it in my machine, but I think I'll stitch right here just to keep the cuff in place. But after that, I just need to add the buttons and then these pants will be done. Here are the completed pants. Here's the front and the side and the back. Overall, I'd say I'm pretty happy with these pants. I like the colors, I like the brown and the blue together, and I like this sort of tonal blue. I think I could have done a better job with the top stitching. Like, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but there's like, you can see areas where the top stitching is a little thicker because I went over it a couple times. And here's a loose thread here. Yeah, okay. Pretty happy with it as well. It's fairly roomy in the thigh, but it comes to like a relatively narrow hem, which I like. I really like that kind of silhouette for pants. In terms of size, I probably could have chosen one size up. So they sent me two sizes to choose from, and I chose the smaller one in vanity. But it's quite snug at my waist, pretty good at my hips. So I think it might be in that zone where I can like maybe just wear it a couple times and it'll stretch out a little bit at the waist to fit really comfortably. Overall, like I said, I'm pretty happy with it. And if you make it or need help with any instructions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Again, this pattern was made with color blocking and patchwork in mind, so feel free to use as many colors and patterns as you want. I'm really excited to see what people make with this pattern. So yeah, thanks for watching.